Snow is falling on Mount Hermon. It comes down out of a black sky, in no particular hurry, settling on slopes that keep their white long after the valleys below have gone brown with heat. At the mountain's foot, cold springs rise in the dark. They are the headwaters of the Jordan, and they run all night, every night, whether anyone is listening or not. A few lamps burn in the hill villages. Otherwise, the mountain keeps its own company. There is an old book that carries the name of Enoch, and it says this is the mountain where angels once came down, 200 of them, in the days of a man called Jared. Azazel walked among them. The book tells what they brought down with them, and how the whole matter was finally laid to rest. All of it is finished now, even inside the story. It was finished ages before the oldest lamp in the oldest village was first lit. Tonight, nothing is falling on Hermon but snow. This is a story for sleeping, and it will be told that way. I will keep my voice low from here to the end. It will not rise, and the story will not lurch. Nothing asks to be remembered. The chapters know their own order, and if sleep takes you somewhere in the middle of one, the telling will go on without you, quietly, the way snow keeps falling with no one at the window. So let the mountain stand there, white against the dark. We will come back to that snow many times tonight. It is the stillest thing in this whole long story. And the story begins where the book begins, not with angels at all, but with a world in which everything still kept its place. Begin with a pair of hands. They belong to a scribe, and they are steady, because this work has no use for hurry. Before him lies a sheet of goatskin, scraped and smoothed until it takes ink the way still water takes light. The pen is a cut reed. The ink is black as lampsoot, which is fair since lampsoot is mostly what it is made of. He is copying a book, letter by letter, the way you might carry water in a shallow dish, slowly and watching every step. The book is the one this night belongs to, the Book of Enoch. It is old in the way rivers are old. Pieces of it, written in Aramaic, slept for some 2,000 years in caves above the Dead Sea, folded into jars in the dry dark. Other pieces travelled in Greek, but the whole of it, beginning to end with nothing missing, survived in one language only, Gures, the old church tongue of Ethiopia, where the book is scripture to this day and where the name on it is Henoch. Every copy anyone has ever held descends from other hands. This scribe copied from an older book, whose scribe copied from an older one still, and so on, back and back, down a long corridor of lamplit tables. No one recorded which hand set it down first. The corridor simply runs back further than anyone's remembering. And the first thing the book says is this: an old man is blessing people he will never meet. Not his own generation. The book is plain about that. Enoch speaks his blessing over a generation far away, remote from him, downstream of everything he knows. He is speaking past everyone in the room, past his own century entirely. A blessing aimed like a lantern down the years, at whoever happens to be standing there when it finally arrives. By now, that is you. There is big weather in those first lines, far mountains, a majesty passing over them. But it passes at a distance, the way summer thunder can walk the whole horizon without disturbing the field you are lying in. What remains when it has gone by is the promise, and the promise is gentle. Peace will be made with the righteous, the chosen will be kept, and mercy and help will be upon them. And, in the book's own words, light shall appear unto them. After the blessing, the book does a quiet, patient thing. Before it tells any story at all, it asks its reader to look around, at the sky, at the turning of the year, and notice how much of the world simply keeps its word. Look at the lights of heaven, it says, how they rise and set in order, each in its own season, none wandering from its course. The sun has never once forgotten the morning. The moon keeps her slow accounts without being asked. The stars come out in their appointed places, like lamps lit each evening by a punctual hand, and not one of them trades its place for another's. Look at the earth, it says, and the works done upon it, unchanged from the beginning. Winter comes, and the whole land fills with water. Clouds go over, and dew settles. Rain falls, and knows where to fall. Summer follows, and the sun stands high, and the ground holds its heat until you go looking for shade. And shade, too, is always there to be found. The trees cover themselves in green leaves and bear their fruit. The seas and the rivers carry on their tasks together. None of it changes, and none of it argues. The book calls all this obedience. You could as easily call it reliability. Either way, it has the same shape as a house at night, with the doors fastened and the fires banked. Everything doing what it should, and nothing needing you awake. And in the middle of this counting, the book pauses on one small observation, the loveliest thing in its opening pages. Consider the trees in winter, it says. See how they stand as though withered, every leaf given up, the whole orchard apparently asleep. And then notice, the book is quietly delighted by this, that 14 kinds of tree do not. 14 trees keep their leaves. Through the cold months, while everything around them stands bare, they hold their old foliage, green in the grey season, 2 years, 3 years, until the new leaves come to relieve the old like a watch changing at a gate. The book does not name them, it only counts them. 14, a small, exact number, counted once and left to stand. Somebody, very long ago, walked through a winter and counted the trees that were still green and thought, this belongs in the book about how the world keeps faith. 14 trees, holding their leaves in the cold. It is not a large miracle. It is better than that. It is a dependable one. Every winter since, in the hills that book came from, some trees have gone bare and some have stayed green, without any fuss at all. The opening ends the way it began, with the promise grown fuller. To the patient and the good, the book says, light and joy will be given, and peace, and the earth itself for an inheritance. Wisdom will be given them too. This is the part worth keeping under your pillow, and having it, they will not stumble again, and they will live out the whole number of their days in peace, their years of gladness multiplying quietly, one on another, all the days of their life. That is the entire overture. No angels yet, no trouble yet, just a voice saying, "See how faithfully the world is kept, and you too will be kept." The scribe copies the last line of it, lays his reed down and flexes his fingers. In the margin of the older book he is copying from, just beside the promise, there is a small, oily fingerprint. Some reader before him, centuries gone, turned this page mid-supper and left a thumb's worth of themselves next to it. The scribe smiles at it and copies on. He does not wipe it away. The book lives on, and one of the places it lives is worth seeing at evening. In the north of Ethiopia, there is a wide lake called Tana, the mother water of the Blue Nile. Islands are scattered across it, and on the islands stand monasteries, some so old that their founding is its own half-legend. Their churches are round, the walls painted with saints, and in their treasuries the manuscripts rest on shelves, goatskin pages wrapped in cloth, sleeping the way birds sleep. Among them are copies of this book. Here it is scripture, read as scripture, and it has been for a very long time. Evening on Tana is unhurried. Fishermen pole home on tankshars, boats built of bundled papyrus, riding low in the water. Pelicans settle. The day's last light goes amber on the round walls, and inside, small flames are set going. Beeswax candles, honey sweet as they burn. And somewhere in its chest, a wrapped book the size of a paving stone sits in the dark, having outweighted empires without once raising its voice. Nobody ever did record whose hand copied it first. Somewhere down the corridor, that stopped mattering. The book kept every hand's patience, the first and all the hands after it. And patience, it turns out, can be handed on. That is record enough. Far north of the lake, past deserts and one narrow sea, the night is older. And on Mount Hermon, the snow is still coming down, soundless, taking its time. The springs at the mountain's foot run on in the dark, the way the rivers in the old litany run, keeping their task, asking nothing. Everything, for now, is where it should be. The sons of heaven are at their high windows, looking down the way they have for ages, unhurried like everything else tonight. Their part comes next, and it will be told just as slowly. Begin lower down in the world, where the people are. By the time this part of the story opens, the children of men have multiplied. There are more villages than there used to be, more terraces cut into more hillsides, more wells worn smooth at the lip. And daughters have been born, the book pauses to say so. Daughters comely and beautiful, which is the book's way of saying that the world below had grown lovely and knew how to live in itself. Evening in one of those villages goes like this. Water comes up the path in clay jars, unhurried. Flatbread comes off hot clay, and the smoke of olive wood settles along the lanes the way it always settles, at about the height of a doorway. Children are called in by name, twice. On one doorstep, a piece of mending lies where it was set down, the bone needle still in the cloth, waiting for morning with no complaint. Lamps are lit, small ones, oil and a pinch of wick, and one by one the houses turn from grey to gold. That is what could be seen from above, and it was seen. High over all of it, At the rails and windows of heaven stood the ones the book calls the sons of heaven. Watchers, in its older word, a name usually taken to mean the wakeful ones. Watching was their whole office. They did not tire of it, and they did not sleep. And for long ages, that was enough. The world turning below them like a slow wheel of lamplight and harvest, and they at their high windows, awake on purpose, which is the one thing tonight does not ask of you. But long looking turns in time into longing. What moved them was not one face at one well. It was the whole warm underneath of the world. Thresholds and hearth smoke, and bread broken at the same hour in 100 houses. And the daughters of men moving through all of it. Lovely the way lamplit doorways are lovely. The longing to the evening, in a way nothing in heaven belonged to anything. The sons of heaven wanted that. Houses of their own in the world. Wives, children answering to their names at dusk. And so, the book says, they said it to one another, "Come, let us go down and choose wives from among the children of men, and have children of our own." Who said it first? The book does not tell. It is careful about many things, and it is careful about this. The sentence is given to all of them at once, passed between them the way wind passes through one field of wheat, every stalk leaning, no stalk first. Their leader heard it and was afraid. His name was Shemedza, and his fear was a particular one, and the book lets him say it plainly, that the others would agree with their mouths and fall away with their feet, and that he alone would be left to pay for a great sin. He does not pretend the word is other than it is. He says sin, quietly, like a man naming the weather he is about to walk into. And the answer they gave him was the oath. "Then let none of us carry it alone," they said. "Let us all swear, every one, and bind ourselves each to each with a hard word against turning back, so that whatever comes of this is carried by 200 and not by one." So they came down. In the days of a man called Jared, the book counts its years by him and moves on, 200 of the sons of heaven came down together onto the summit of Mount Hermon. The book does not give the season. The mountain, for its part, keeps snow on that summit most of the year, so the odds are good that the ground they stood on was white. Picture it slowly, because this is the hour the mountain remembers. 200 figures on a snowfield above the world, in the thin blue light that lives on high places, and the oath going around, spoken low, voice after voice, each one binding itself to all the rest. There was a curse folded inside the promise, a hard word for any who turned back. The book says so, once, and that is all the room we will give it. The snow took their words the way snow takes every sound, gently and for keeps. And the mountain was given its name from that hour, Hermon, the book says, called so because of the oath sworn on it. Stone keeping the record of a promise, the way stone keeps everything, without comment. Below them, none of it showed. The villages went on turning gold and then dark, one lamp at a time. The mending waited on its doorstep, and nobody looked up. The biggest hour the mountain would ever keep passed over the world's sleep without leaving a ripple on it. When the last voice had joined, there was nothing left on the summit but the usual wind and the snow going on with its snowing. The book keeps their names. 19 of them stand written. the chiefs of tens, each one set over 10 of the others, and it lists them without one word of description, the way old registers do. You are not asked to remember them. They are beads, not keys. Let them go through your hands, one at a time, and drop away. Shemiesia, who led them, Arakiba, Ramel, Kochabiel, Tamiel, Ramiel, Danel, Ezekiel, Barakijal, Azazel, SDS Knight has already named, Armaros, Batarel, Ananel, Zakiel, Samsapiel, Satarel, Turel, Yomyael, Sariel, vendors who closes the list. 19 names, and the snow under all of them. And there the question of who spoke first goes quiet for good. After the oath, it stopped being a question with an owner. Every one of them said yes with the same word at the same hour. When the book wants to answer who, it answers with the whole string of names, evenly, bead after bead, and lets the list be the answer. The summit they stood on is real, and you can watch evening come to it. Stand in the foothills on the eastern side, among the orchards, and the mountain fills the whole northern sky. There is a town on its lower slopes called Majdal Shams, a town of apple and cherry trees, and at dusk the picking ladders lean where they were left. The lights come on one window at a time, and the air is orchard grass and wood smoke. Above all that, the high shoulder of Chechmon holds the last of the light. The snow up there goes gold for a moment, then a long blue-grey, like a lamp being turned down slowly by someone careful. In Arabic, the mountain is called Jabal Ashekh, the old man's mountain, people will tell you, for the white head it keeps. In winter, a chairlift runs part way up its side. On summer evenings, the chairs hang still in a long, quiet line, swaying a little, off-duty. The mountain that once took an oath into its snow now takes orchard birds and the small talk of a town settling for the night. It holds those just as carefully. It is not a mountain that drops things. And the snow, look at it once more before this chapter lets you go. It was there before the 200 came down, if the season was as we guessed, and it is there tonight, holding its ground the way it was holding it when tonight began. Words were said into it once. The snow kept them, the way it keeps everything, and went on snowing. What the 200 carried down with them, the gifts and the teaching, a slow rain of them, belongs to the next stretch of the night, and it will fall just as gently there. Nothing in it needs you awake. Let the mountains stand. Let the names go. The snow is falling on Chemon, and it does not need any help. There is a new husband in one of the hill houses. He is one of the 200. Which one the book does not say, and the house does not care. What the house knows is that he is learning it, the weight of a full water jar, the way bread wants tending at exactly the moment you have sat down, the surprising number of things a roof needs. He came down knowing the courses of stars. These days he knows where the drafts get in. Of the two kinds of knowledge, it is not obvious which one he holds more carefully. All across the hills that year it was the same. The 200 married into the world, a wedding here, a wedding there, until the thing was quietly everywhere. The book, telling it, already knows how it will end and writes hard names over the whole business. It is entitled to them. But from inside the houses that year, it looked like lamplight and wedding bread. And then the gifts began. They started kitchen-sized. The wives were taught first, charms and enchantments, the old book calls it, and the cutting of roots. Which plant eases a fever, and which root, steeped slow, will quiet a mind at bedtime. Food and medicine turned out to be neighbours, and sometimes the same plant. Knowledge handed across kitchen tables, wife to sister, sister to neighbour, the way all real knowledge in a village travels. Azazel's gifts were larger, and they came with fire. He taught the metals of the earth, where they hide, and the art of working them. And the hills learned the sound of the forge, the bellows, and the patient ring of hammer on iron cooling. Out of that fire came swords and knives and shields and breastplates, laid out in the book's list as plainly as tools on a bench, which is what they were that first year. Out of the same fire, the same hands, came the other half of the list. Bracelets and ornaments, worked gold and silver, costly stones, tinctures for colouring cloth, and antimony ground fine for the eyes. What the book calls, in its own words, the beautifying of the eyelids. One forge, both harvests. A village dog found the warm outside wall of it early on and slept there all winter, entirely uninterested in the secrets of heaven. It is an odd pairing to find on a single page, swords and eye paint, armour and bracelets, side by side in one list, taught by one teacher. The book writes them down together and moves along. And for a while, we can do the same. That is how the secrets came, not as thunder, but as slow rain. A teaching here, a technique there, drifting down household by household, the kind of rain that soaks in without ever seeming to fall hard. By the time anyone thought to measure it, the ground of the world was dark with it, all the way down. And the sky knowledge came too, each branch of it from its own teacher, and the book remembers who taught what. Say them slowly, one breath apiece. Semyaza taught enchantments and the cutting of roots. Amaros taught the resolving of enchantments, the undoing, so that whatever had been tied could be untied again. Barakijal taught the reading of the stars. Kokabeel, the constellations, which lights make a figure together, and what the figure is called. Azazel taught the knowledge of the clouds, and Arakiel the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun, and Sariel the course of the moon, her comings and goings, her thin nights and her full ones. 8 teachers, and the whole sky parcelled out among them like a field among brothers. An evening class that lasted years, held under the very thing it studied. The world grew brighter and heavier. That is the honest summary. People could read the night sky now and ease a fever and undo a binding. The book says just as plainly that they went astray with all of it and grew corrupt in their ways. And we can let the book say that once and set it down. As for the odd pairing on Azazel's page, the swords and the eye paint, the book counts them the same way, and perhaps this is why. Both of them changed how people were seen. Armor and adornment are cousins, closer than they look. Each one is worn. Each one is a way of meeting other eyes. The list knew what it was doing. To the marriages, children were born, and the children were giants. The Ethiopic copies give their height, 3,000 ells, a number so large it has stopped being a measurement and become a way of saying, not like us. Their hunger was larger than the field's patience, and grief came into the story then. The book does not look away from it, and we will not pretend it is not there. But its particulars belong to a colder hour than this one, and tonight we let them pass, the way you let a far-off funeral pass at the end of a long road, standing still a moment, saying nothing. The earth itself grew tired, and said so. That is one of the strangest, gentlest turns in the whole book. The earth is given a voice, and uses it, laying out her complaint the way an old woman lays out wool, slowly leaving nothing back. And the cry of people rose to heaven, going up the way smoke goes up on a windless evening, straight and sure of its address. Hold on to this one thing before the chapter sets you down. The cry was heard. It did not wander. It did not cue. Nothing in heaven was asleep. That had always been the arrangement. And the moment the cry arrived, it was already in the right hands. All of that teaching had a long afterlife, and the quietest part of it you can stand in front of at evening. On the western shore of the Dead Sea, under cliffs the colour of honey at the day's end, there is a place called Qumran. A dry streambed cuts past a marl terrace, and across that little wadi, in the cliff face, is the dark doorway of a cave that scholars call, without ceremony, Cave 4. Toward dusk, the heat lets go of the stones slowly, like a hand unclenching. Tristram's grackles come down the cliffs in whistled slides, orange flashing under their black wings, and the sea below goes flat and pewter-coloured, the lowest water on earth, lying absolutely still. In that cave and its neighbours, the oldest surviving copies of this chapter slept for some 2,000 years. Scraps of skin with Aramaic letters on them, and on the scraps, the names of the chiefs, the teaching lists, Azazel and the metals, the 8 teachers of the sky. The secrets of heaven, the ones that remade the world, ended up here, folded small in the dark of a desert cave, the least dangerous things in the whole country. Ink sleeps. That is most of what ink does, across a long enough evening. And when the scraps were finally lifted out and read, what they held was this same story you are lying in now, told to the same end, quietly. The sea those cliffs stand over is where the Jordan finishes. The same water that rises cold at the foot of Hermon, the springs from the very first minutes of tonight, comes down the whole long valley and ends here, its task complete, with nothing further asked of it. One valley, top to bottom, snow at one end, still water at the other. And on the mountain tonight, the snow is falling the way it was falling when we began, unbothered, holding its ground. Who was standing at heaven's rail when the cry arrived? And how gently the answer was made? That is the next stretch of the night, and it is a kind one. There is nothing to carry there, The rain of secrets has soaked in, and the dog is asleep at the forge wall. The snow does not hurry, and neither will we. Come up to the rail then, where the cry was going. 4 figures are standing at it, and they have been standing there a while. Michael, Uziel, Raphael, Gavriel. The book gives their names without introduction, as though of course you know them. And at this hour they are doing the oldest work of their kind, leaning at the rail of heaven like watchmen on a city wall at night, looking down at the trouble below, with the cry arriving into their hands like smoke arriving into rafters. What they do about it is the gentlest strange thing. They do not reach for anything. They turn instead to the Most High, and they pray. And the prayer is not news. Line by line, it is a recitation of what the one they are praying to already sees. You see what Atzazel has done, they say. The secrets of heaven, the ones kept back on purpose, walking around loose in the world. You see what Semyaza gathered around himself with the authority he was given. You see the souls of the dead standing at the gates of heaven, making their suit, and their sighing rising, unable to stop. You know all things before they happen. You see all this, and you have not yet told us what to do. That is the whole prayer, more or less. Not information, but company. 4 of them standing with the world's grief in front of someone who already knows every line of it, asking not for facts, but for errands, to be told what their hands are for. There are nights when that is what asking is for. The answer began with shelter. Before anything else, before any decree touched any of the 200, Oel was sent down with a message for one man, the son of Lemech, whom the book then names plainly, Noah. The word found him at home, doing something ordinary. The book does not say what, so give him a coil of rope to be mending, since every man who will ever build anything is always mending rope. Hide yourself, the message ran. A great water is coming. The book calls it destruction and means it, and we will let that word stand without unpacking it. And you are to carry yourself through, and your seed after you, preserved for all the generations of the world. The first decree of the Great Judgment, in other words, was a door held open. Keep that. Whatever else this hour of the story is, it begins with somebody being tucked out of the weather. Then Raphael was given his errand, and it is the one this night is named for. Bind Atzazel's hand and foot, the instruction ran. And here you must let the book's solemnity and its strange tenderness lie down in the same sentence, because they do. An opening was to be made in the desert, in Duadel. The book gives the place a name and nothing else, no map under it at all. And Atzazel was to be laid into it, down into the dark. Rough, jagged stones were to be set over him. Darkness was to cover him, the way a blanket covers whatever else it is also doing. And his face was to be covered, so that no light would reach his eyes, which is judgment. The book means it as judgment, and it is also, notice, the exact gesture you make for someone you are settling to sleep in a bright room. You shade the eyes first. There he was to lie, still, for the long age. The Forge Master, the teacher of both halves of the list. All that fire, banked at last under stone, in the quietest room the world owns, which is the ground. The book adds one appointment more, on a morning so far off it has no date, and files it away. That page belongs to a colder hour than any we will visit. And it does its bookkeeping too, in a single line. Let the whole account be written to Azazel's name. One name over the ledger. Then the ledger is closed. Gaviel's errand concerned the giants, and the book lets it happen offstage, among themselves, without inviting us in. Their long hunger ended there, and that is all tonight needs of it. Magiel's errand was for Shemazai and the rest of the oath-takers. They were to be gathered and bound and tucked beneath the valleys of the earth. The book's own geography, valleys, plural, unnamed, for 70 generations. Not forever. Counted. 70 generations. The way you would say 70 winters. A long sleep with a far side to it. What the book appoints beyond that far side, it writes once, in its own cold ink. And we leave the sentence lying where it is. And then the orders turn green. This is where the chapter was always going. Let wrong be ended, the decree runs, and let the plant of righteousness and truth appear. A plant, notice, not a monument, not a trumpet. A thing that arrives at the speed growing things grow. The righteous will escape and live and beget their thousands, and complete their youth and their old age in peace. The book says both, youth and old age. The whole arc of a life carried gently from one end to the other. The tilled earth will answer them. Seed sown on it, returning 1,000 measures for one. Vines will bend with wine, and every measure of olives will give up 10 presses of oil. Plenty, in other words, of the most unglamorous kind, the kind you store. And over all of it, the store chambers of blessing that are in heaven will be opened and sent down. Blessing not as weather, but as supply, lowered steadily onto the work and labour of ordinary hands. The chapter that began with a cry going up ends with storehouses coming down. The same sky, used in the other direction. Last of all, the decree makes its quietest promise. And here is the chapter's one line in the book's own words. Truth and peace shall be associated together, allied, keeping company, through every day the world will have, and every family it will hold. Not victory, company. The two of them walking the years side by side, like neighbours who long ago stopped needing to talk. The book never says where Dudal is. It hands you the name and keeps the map. And after a whole chapter of this, you can begin to suspect that is not carelessness. A rest with no address is a rest nothing disturbs. No road leads there, so no road brings anyone. The one sleeper in this story who is never once shown waking is the one nobody can visit. Perhaps that is the mercy folded into the decree. The same hand that covered his face also, so to speak, unlisted the room. But deserts, like the one the book imagined, those you can stand in, and evening is their best hour. East of Jerusalem, the Judean wilderness folds away toward the Dead Sea in sleeping ridges. And in one of its gorges, clinging to the rock like something grown there, stands the monastery of Mar Saber, where men have gone on purpose for some 1,500 years to be quiet in a desert. At dusk, the gorge holds the day's last honey-coloured light, and then lets it go. Lamps come on in the windows, small and old-fashioned. Far off, a jackal calls, once, and thinks better of it. The wilderness does what it has always done best, which is nothing, beautifully. This is not Dudael. Nowhere is on purpose, but it is the kind of country the decree was written for. Stone that keeps its own counsel, ground that has been practicing stillness since before there were names. And standing at its edge at nightfall, you can believe the oldest claim this chapter makes, that a desert is not an empty thing. It is a held thing. Quiet is kept there, the way grain is kept in a storehouse. Far to the north, at the top of the long valley, the snow is falling on Hermon tonight, the way it has fallen through every chapter so far, holding its ground, asking nothing. White over the mountain, stone over the sleeper. The story is learning to tuck things in. And through all of this, one man was somewhere else entirely. Hidden, the book says. Kept apart, keeping letters. His name you know because the book wears it. Enoch, the hidden scribe, is next. And his is the gentlest room in the whole house. Nothing in it needs you awake. The snow does not hurry. Neither does he. There is a table and a lamp on it, and a man at it, writing. The lamp is small and behaves itself. The pen is a cut reed. You have seen one like it already tonight in another scribe's fingers, a long age downstream of this one. He keeps a little knife for recutting it, and the shavings gather at the table's edge like pale commemors. The ink dries as he goes. There is no hurry anywhere in the room, because hurry has never once improved a letter. The man is Enoch, and the book must now do a thing old books do without apology. It steps back. Before the errands of the last hour, before the decrees, before the desert was opened, Enoch was hidden. That is the book's own word. Hidden. Taken up out of the world's sight so gently that no one among the children of men knew where he was or what had become of him. He had not vanished the way lost things vanish. He had been put somewhere, the way a letter is put in a drawer that locks, safe and close to the hand that owns the drawer. His days, the book says, were with the holy ones. What a scribe does among the holy ones, the book leaves mostly to the imagination. And the imagination behaves itself here, copying and keeping fair record of things worth keeping. His neighbours in that hiddenness did not sleep. It was not in their nature. And from them, you suppose, he learned his unhurried hours, how to work at the pace of beings with no deadline anywhere in them, for whom every task is simply next, and nothing is ever late. And here a word needs a moment's care, because the book uses it for two families at once. Watcher was heaven's word before it was anyone's. It named an order, the wakeful ones who keep the long watch and do not sleep. And the 200 were of that order once. They were the watchers who left. But the order itself remained at its posts, awake as ever, and it is these, the watchers who stayed, who come now to the man at the table and call him by name. They give him a title while they are at it, and it is the best title in the whole book. The Scribe of Righteousness. Not its judge, its scribe. The one who writes things down slowly and gets them right. They found him, the book notes, in the middle of blessing, praising the Lord of Majesty, the King of Ages, when the call came, which tells you what his idle time was for. And at that exact seam, something quietly astonishing happens to the book itself. It changes hands. Up to this line, it has spoken about Enoch, the way books speak about people. At this line, it says, I, Enoch, and never quite goes back. The pen passes to the man the story is about. From here on, much of the telling is in his own voice, and it is a steady one, as you would expect from a man whose whole office is patience. The errand they gave him was a hard one carried in soft hands. Go, they said, to the watchers who left, to the ones who traded the everlasting heights for houses and hearths, and tell them what has been decided, that there will be no peace for them, and no forgiveness of the thing they taught and did. A sentence of bonds, the same stones and the same darkness you have already watched being made ready. And Canox, of all creation, was to be the one to say it out loud. He did not go with an escort, and he did not go with a scroll of thunder. He went the way scribes go anywhere, carrying words already finished, with nothing left to compose on the road. There is a special calm to a messenger with nothing to rehearse. The message was as done as a message can be. All that remained was the walking. Notice the choice. Of all the offices heaven keeps, and it keeps many, the news was handed to a scribe. Not a herald with a horn, a man with ink on his fingers. Hold that oddness a moment. The chapter will come back for it. He went to Azazel first. The book says so. The teacher of both halves of the list, the forge master, first on the route. And listen to how the thing is said, because this is the centerpiece of the chapter and one of the quiet marvels of the book. There is no relish in it. There is no speech. Canox tells Azazel that no peace is coming to him, that a severe sentence has gone out, a sentence of bonds, because of what he taught. And he says it the way you tell a friend the worst news, plainly, with not one word more than the truth requires, which is its own kind of gentleness. Sad news, delivered kindly, is still sad. It is also still kind. The book lets both stand, and so will we. Notice too what he does not do. He does not soften the sentence. Not one clause of it is missing, not one bond fewer. What he softens is the delivery. Mercy in this chapter is not a change in the message, it is a change in the hands. Then he went and said it to all of them together. gathered in one place, and they were afraid. Fear and trembling took hold of the assembly, and the book registers that once, softly, and steps back from it, and so do we. Even sentences need not be watched landing. The oddness of the messenger resolves the way quiet things resolve. A scribe was sent because writing is slow, and slow was what this news needed. A horn is instant. Ink is not. A scribe cannot shout by profession. Every word he carries has been cooled once on a page and weighed at a table before it ever travels. Heaven, holding the hardest message in the story, chose the slowest hands available. Hands that would not add heat to it or take truth from it. And that choice is itself a mercy, maybe the least noticed one in the book. When the worst must be said, send someone whose whole craft is care. The scribe's own book has kept the habit of quiet rooms. One of them is in Oxford. In 1773, a Scottish traveller named James Bruce came out of Ethiopia carrying, among much else, manuscripts of this very book, the whole of it in Guise on vellum, and one of those copies came to rest in the Bodleian Library, where it rests still. It was from that copy, a lifetime later, that the book was first carried over into English. The hidden scribe stepped back into the world's sight by way of a reading room. Evening in Oxford suits it. The old library closes the way libraries close, gradually, and then not quite entirely. Lamps go out over the desks in ones and twos. Stone quadrangles the colour of old paper hold the last of the light. Bicycles tick past on the cobbles, and somewhere across the roofs a great bell counts the hour at unbothered length. Inside, in the dark of the special collections, the Guise pages lie flat and wrapped, next to neighbours from every century, all of them asleep on the job in the most dignified way possible. Librarians, when you think about it, are the scribe's own descendants. People who believe that the right way to keep a thing is quietly, and that closing time is a form of tucking in. Far from those lamps, east and south, past a sea and a desert you have already crossed tonight, the snow is falling on Hermon, patient as ink drying. The mountain has kept its watch through 5 chapters now, without once being asked to. White page, white summit. The story keeps being written on things that hold still. As for the 200, the sentence has been said to them now, kindly, and they have heard it. What they do next is the tender hinge of the whole book. They ask the scribe for a letter. The writing of that letter and the reading of it aloud beside running water until sleep arrives mid-sentence is the next hour of the night. And it is the drowsiest passage in all of old literature. You could not be better placed for it than where you are. The lamp is small and behaves itself. The snow does not hurry. Neither does the pen. They came to him the way people come when they cannot come proudly. The sentence had been said, and they had heard it. And now the 200 gathered around the scribe with a request so human it aches a little. Write us a letter. They could no longer do their own asking. That is the detail the book gives, and it gives it plainly. From now on, they could not speak toward heaven, could not so much as lift their eyes to it, for shame of what they had done. Shame had taken their voices and their gaze, the 2 instruments of asking, and so they turned to the man whose instruments were different. Paper does not have to look anyone in the eye. Ink does not tremble, whatever the hand is doing. Write it for us, they said, a petition for forgiveness and, the book adds, for length of days, and read it aloud in the presence of the Lord of heaven, since we cannot stand where reading like that is done. And Hanox did what scribes do with sorrow. He took it down. He wrote out their petition, their spirits and their deeds, and the request they could not make themselves, set fair on the page, each thing in its place, the way he had been putting things in their places all his hidden life. It took as long as it took. Then he rolled the letter and went to find the right place to read it. Because a letter addressed to heaven wants open air and a voice, and the reading matters as much as the writing. He walked down out of the high country, south and west, with the mountain at his back. In his bag, the letter, rolled in a cloth. Also a heel of bread he will forget to eat. The land of Dan received him the way it receives everyone, with the sound of water arriving from every direction at once, because this is the place where Hermon lets go of its snow. What falls white on the summit goes into the mountain and travels down through the dark of it, slowly. The mountain keeps its own schedule, and comes out here as springs, cold and constant, already a river within sight of its own beginning. The book gives the address without fuss. The waters of Dan, in the land of Dan, south and west of Hermon. He sat down beside them, and here is the verse this whole night was built around. It is one line long. He sat down at the waters of Dan, and then, in the book's own words, I read their petition till I fell asleep. Stay inside that line a while. It is the softest bed in ancient literature. A man beside running water, reading aloud, reading slowly, because the letter deserves it, and because there is no one to hurry for. And the water underneath his voice the whole time. Water that has been rehearsing that sound since before there were letters. His voice and the spring's voice braid together. He reads their deeds set down fair, and the asking at the end. Perhaps he reads their names too, the beads you let go 2 hours ago, one at a time, into the water. Every line he finishes, the current takes and carries off. A letter read over running water is being mailed even as it is being said, which may be the oldest post in the world. The reading goes on, the light goes somewhere. And at a certain point, the book does not say which word he reached, and it matters wonderfully little. The reading stops being reading. His eyes close over the ink. The petition settles to his knees. Hanox, the man heaven chose for his patience, is asleep beside the water, the letter still in his hands. The water does not change its behavior in the least. It kept the same sound for the reading and keeps it now for the sleeping. No louder, no softer. The perfect audience for both. And the afternoon leans, and the shade moves a hand's width across the sleeping man, and nothing anywhere requires anything. Notice, gently, without alarm, that the reading is unfinished. He was asked to read the whole of it, and sleep arrived somewhere in the middle instead. Hold that loosely, the way he is holding the page. If you are drifting yourself by now, mid-sentence somewhere, you are in the best company this book has to offer. Do exactly as he does. The story will hold the page for both of you. And into that sleep, the answer came. The book says a dream came to him, and visions fell upon him. Fell like the gentlest possible weather. And a voice was in them, giving him what he had walked all this way to get. Heaven's reply, and a charge to carry it back and say it. A reprimand, the book calls it, to the sons of heaven. What those visions held, you will walk through yourself in the next hour, room by room. They are the grandest architecture in the whole book, and every stone of it was visited by a sleeping man. For now it is enough to know this. The reply did not come to the reading, it came to the sleep. He woke with the water still talking, and he went to where they were waiting. The book names the place, Abel Yael, between Lebanon and Sennacer, a name gone soft at the edges since, and found them sitting all together, gathered close the way grief gathers people, weeping with their faces covered. Even now they could not be looked at looking. And Hanok stood before the covered faces and began, quietly, to tell them what he had seen in his sleep. So the reading was never finished, and it turns out that was never a flaw. He was sent to read in the presence of the Lord, and the presence, that day, was most reachable from inside sleep. The dream was not an interruption of the errand. The dream was the errand arriving. He did not fail to deliver the letter by sleeping. Sleeping is how it was delivered. Carried the last distance by the part of him that had stopped trying. Keep that in your hand tonight in place of the petition. Nothing you are listening for requires you awake to receive it. The waters of Dan are still there, still talking, and you can sit beside them. In the far north of Yeswael, where the border country goes green all at once, the springs rise inside a nature reserve called Tel Dan. It is the most surprising place in the region. One step off the hot road and you are under big plane trees, on shaded paths, with cold water going past in genuine hurry, the one hurrying thing in this whole night, and somehow the most restful. The Dan Spring is the largest of the Yathden's sources. The river is born loud here and calms down later, like most of us. On the mound above the water, archaeologists have uncovered gates older than almost any gates anywhere. One of mud brick, arched, from an age so early the arch itself was nearly new. And a little west of the springs, scholars point to another low mound as the likeliest candidate for the book's Abel Yael, though the book itself keeps its counsel. Toward evening, the light comes down through the leaves in coins. The sound never changes register, and it becomes very easy to believe the verse happened exactly here. A man, a letter, and this same braided noise underneath. And the water is the snow. That is the quiet triumph of the geography. What stands white on Hemenon's summit, the whiteness you have been resting on all night, does not stay there forever. It goes into the mountain and comes out here, at the reading place, as the steadiest lullaby in the country. The snow that holds its ground eventually keeps a man company at his reading, and reads him to sleep. Tonight it is doing both at once, falling up there, flowing down here, two ends of one patience. As for the covered faces and the answer he carries, you already know the shape of it. The decrees were read to you an hour ago. Nothing in the next chapter can surprise you, only unfold. What waits there instead is the dream itself, the wall of hail, and the house of ember light at the centre of everything. All of it toured in sleep, at sleep's pace. Go there as he went. The water will keep talking whether you hear it or not. The snow is falling on Shimon, and some of it tonight is already on its way to the springs. he is still asleep by the water. Keep that underneath everything in this chapter. A man on a bank, breathing slowly, a letter gone loose in his hands, the springs talking on. Everything you are about to see happens inside him, at the pace of sleep, the only pace grand things consent to be seen at. Down at the springs, at some point in all this, a moth lands on his sleeve and stays. That is the whole of what the outside world will contribute. The dream begins, as Heaven's replies apparently must, with the paperwork. The petition is answered, and the answer is the one you have known for 2 chapters. Refused. For all the days of eternity, refused. No going back. The earth to hold them as long as the world has days. The hardest line in it concerns their sons, and we stood at that graveside once already tonight, at the far end of a long road, and we are not walking back. The refusal is folded into the dream's opening, the way bad news is folded into a long letter from a kind hand. Early, briefly, with the rest of the letter waiting to hold you. Because the rest of this dream is not a verdict. It is a tour. It starts with weather that wants him. Clouds invite him. That is the book's own tone, invitation, and a mist summons. The courses of the stars and the lightnings hurry him along like ushers. Winds take him under their arms and lift. No effort of his appears anywhere in the sentence. He does not climb to heaven. He is carried, asleep, the way a child is carried in from the cart at the end of a journey. And if the sleeping can be carried that high, you may assume the same arrangement stands tonight. The first thing he reaches is a wall. It is built, the old copies differ as gently as copies can, of crystal, say some, of hailstones, say others. Stone of ice, or ice itself. Either way, it is a wall of frozen light, and around it stand tongues of fire, low ones, the way flames stand when they have burned a long time and have nothing left to prove. Fire at the foot of ice, and neither giving way. The book admits the sight moved even the scribe's steady heart, and that is the last we will say of fear. From here, call it awe, which is fear that has understood it is safe. Beyond the wall, a house. Its walls are like a floor of hailstones set in patterns, ice doing the work of tile, and its floor is the same, and its ceiling is the path of the stars. Not painted stars, the path itself, with the slow traffic of lightnings far up in it, and cherubim of fire between, and above them something clear as still water. Portals of flame let him in. And inside, here is the line in the book's own words. It was hot as fire and cold as ice, both at once. And nothing in the house found this difficult. There were no delights of life in it, the book says, nothing homely, a vastness with nothing to sit on, and the scribe lay down on his face. Awe has only a few postures, and most of them look like sleep. And while he lay there, a second door stood open, into a house greater than the first, built of tongues of fire, the way the first was built of ice. But hear the fire correctly. Nothing in it roars. It is ember through and through. Its floor is banked flame, and above it run the star path and its lightnings. The splendor of it, the book gives up trying to size. And in that house, a throne, lofty, and its look was the look of crystal, ice again, enthroned at the center of all the fire, with wheels like the shining sun and the presence of Keravine about it. From beneath it, rivers of flaming fire go out slowly, the way lava is slow, light moving at the speed of honey. On the throne sat the Great Glory. That is the name the book uses, and then it does the honest thing and fails on purpose. Raiment brighter than the sun, whiter than any snowfall, a face no angel could look upon, not because it was forbidden, but because of magnificence, the way you cannot look long at snow under a noon sun. Fire all around, a great fire standing before, and none able to draw close. Yet the numbers of those standing there, 10,000 times 10,000, the book counts and gives up counting, stand perfectly still, at rest on their feet, none of them needed. He needs no counselor. They are not there to advise. They are there the way candles are there, and the most holy ones, the nearest, do not leave by night and do not depart. The only beings in creation for whom staying up all night is the whole of bliss. Let them have it. They are keeping the light on for the rest of us. And then the stillness moved, once, kindly. The Lord called him. With his own mouth, the book is careful to say, no messenger for this part. And the words were an invitation the size of a doorway, that he should come near and hear. And one of the holy ones came to where the scribe lay, and woke him gently. Even inside the dream, notice, the waking is gentle, house rules, and raised him to his feet, and brought him as far as the door. And there this chapter lays him down, at the door, on his feet, raised by a kind hand, with a voice he trusts on the other side of it. Nothing waiting there can hurt him, and nothing waiting there can surprise you. You have heard its substance twice tonight already. What remains is a patient explanation, and patient explanations keep. Before we step back to the water, settle the oddity the house handed us at its threshold. Hot as fire and cold as ice, both at once, in one room. Everywhere else, those two are a quarrel. Here, they are furniture. The whole architecture repeats it. Ice walls with fire at their feet, and a firehouse with an ice throne at its heart. Opposites laid together, everywhere and nowhere contending. Because contention needs a shortage, and there is none here. The extremes are at rest. That is what the house is made of. More than ice, more than fire. Things that have stopped needing to win. Sleep is a small, local version of the same treaty. You are practicing it, right now. Down by the springs, the moth on the sleeve has not moved. Neither, much, has the night. The materials of that house, it turns out, were never exotic. You can stand among all of them on one hillside. Go up onto the shoulder of Chemon on a clear night, the high slopes above the villages where the road runs out of reasons, and there it is, unassembled, the snowfield under you, faintly giving back starlight. ice doing the work of tile, the cold coming up through your boots, and the warmth of your own coat holding at your skin. Hot and cold in one standing body. Nobody quarrelling, and overhead, with no roof in the way, the ceiling the book described exactly. The path of the stars. The actual path. The long, pale road of the galaxy with its slow traffic. And far off below it, the low orange embers of the villages, banked for the night. Every element of the vision in place, requiring no dream to visit. The book's wildest chapter was furnished from a winter hillside. Its author, scholars quietly suspect, lived within sight of this mountain. A night like this would have handed him his materials. And the snow itself. Look down once. It is not only holding its ground tonight. Upstairs in the story, it has been promoted. It is the whitest thing in the highest room, the colour the book reached for when it needed to say, glory. All night you have been resting on the same white the raiment was. The mountain knew before the book did. The word at the door is next, the patient explanation, a teacher's voice at night, and after it, the long, cool corridors of the cosmos, which this book walks the way other books walk gardens. None of it hurries. The voice behind the door has kept 10,000 times 10,000 waiting in perfect contentment. It will not mind if you are asleep when it speaks. The springs are still talking, and the moth is still riding the sleeve. The snow is falling on Chemon, on the roof of the whole matter, softly, as designed. He is standing at the door where the last chapter left him, and the first words through it are for him, and they are these: Fear not. Fear not, Chanox, righteous man, scribe of righteousness. Come near and hear. The voice has kept 10,000 times 10,000 perfectly content for ages. It is in no hurry now, and it does not scold. What follows is the closest thing this book has to a night class. A patient voice on one side of a door, a tired traveller on the other, and a lesson given slowly, because the teacher has forever, and the student has all night. Chanox smooths the front of his garment once, the way men do at doors, and listens. The first thing the voice sets straight is the direction of the errand. The watchers sent a man to plead for them, and the voice turns that sentence over in its hands and shows him the seam. In the book's own words, you should intercede for men, and not men for you. That was the arrangement. That had always been the arrangement. The strong asking on behalf of the fragile, the deathless standing up for the dying. And the petition Chanox carried was the arrangement inverted. A river asked to run uphill. The voice does not thunder about this. It simply holds the sentence the right way up, so everyone can see which end was made to point where. Then comes the heart of the lesson, and it is about dwellings. Everything, the voice explains, was given the home its nature asks for. The spirits of heaven, deathless and needing nothing, were housed in heaven, which is a place for beings who do not end. The children of earth, dear and brief, were housed on earth, which is a place where things end and begin again. And to those brief ones, and only to those, were wives and children given. Hear why, because the why is the tender part. Because they die. Marriage, in this teaching, is not a pleasure heaven withheld from angels out of strictness. It is a provision, mortality's own provision. Continuation issued to the ones who cannot continue themselves. A child is what a mortal has, instead of forever. The deathless were given no wives for the same reason they were given no lamps. Nothing in them ever gets dark. So the 200 had not broken a rule so much as a fit. Spirit had moved into flesh's house, and the house could not hold the tenant. That is the voice's whole grievance, said without heat. Each thing to its dwelling, and you left yours. And the children of that mismatch, the giants, inherited the mismatch itself. Born of spirit and flesh together, they belonged fully to neither address. And so, the voice says, their restlessness stays in the world. Spirits upon the earth, with the earth for their dwelling, roaming. The book gives them hard verbs, and we will leave the verbs in the book. What we will take is the strangest, saddest detail, the one worth keeping. They take no food, and yet they hunger. They take no drink, and yet they thirst. A hunger with nothing to fill. Note that oddity and hold it loosely. The chapter will fold it into something useful in a moment. Because here is what a hunger like that cannot do. It cannot take anything. It has no hands for holding and no mouth for keeping. It moves because it cannot stay. Whatever it passes, it passes. The old book, hearing wind worry at a door in the night, gave that restlessness this ancestry. The loose ends of an ancient mismatch, out walking. Believe the book or not, the comfort comes out the same. What passes over a sleeping house in the dark is a passing thing. It owns nothing here. It can carry nothing away. It is hungry precisely because taking is the one power it never had. The wind, in other words, is only the wind, a hunger going by with empty hands. And the voice behind the door has already given even that restlessness a term. In this book, everything unquiet has an end date, and everything quiet does not. One more correction, delivered almost as an aside, and it quietly resizes the whole story. The secrets, the famous ones, the forbidden ones, the forge lists and the sky lists, were, the voice says, the worthless ones, the lesser stock. You were in heaven, the voice reminds them, but the mysteries had not all been shown to you. What you carried down in the hardness of your hearts was the anteroom, not the treasury. All that changed the world so much, and it was the minor shelf. The real mysteries never left home. Somewhere far above the highest room, Canox toured, they are keeping still, unstolen, and waiting on no one. There is a deep calm in that once it lands. The worst that ever walked out the door was the least of what the house holds. And then the word the whole visit was for, and the book does not flinch from it, and neither will we, because it has been said twice already, and holds no surprise. Say to them, you have no peace. That is the end of the message. Hear it the way the chapter has earned, not as a blow, but as a door closing far down a corridor. A real door, really closing. In a house so large that by the time the sound reaches you, it is barely a change in the air. It closes on them, not on you. Nothing in your room moved. And here the book performs its most merciful pivot. And it happens in the space between two sentences. The very next line, with the door sound still settling, hands take Hanox and bring him elsewhere. No transition, no dwelling on it. A guide's hand closing over the mourners. The tour resuming as though grief were a room you can simply be walked out of. Which, in this book, it is. The rest of the night is that walk. The voice from behind a barrier has a twin in the landscape, and the twin is made of water. At the foot of Hemon, a short walk around the mountain's knee from the springs of Dan, the mountain speaks a second time. This one is called Banyas. The spring rises at the mouth of a great cave in a red and grey cliff. The ancients were sure the water came from inside the cave itself, out of the dark of the rock. And for centuries they carved small niches beside it for a goat-footed god of wild places. The name Banyas still carries his, worn round by time. Pan's Spring. These days the water seeps out just below the cave's lip rather than through it. The mountain adjusted its plumbing long ago. But the impression holds. A doorway in the rock, and a voice of water coming out of it. Steady and articulate in its own tongue, saying the same sentence forever. Downstream, the water gathers pace, and, farther along its gorge, throws itself off a ledge in the largest waterfall in the country. But at the spring, at dusk, none of that urgency has been invented yet. The pools hold the last light. A wagtail works the shallows. On the walkway rail, the paint has gone soft at the edges from years of spray. It is the gentlest possible version of a voice from behind a door. All sound, no summons, nothing required of the listener at all. And it is the same snow. Banyas and Dan are brother springs, two mouths of one mountain. And what falls white on the summit tonight will someday say itself out of this rock too. The motif you have been resting on has been speaking all along. You have simply been hearing it as water. As for Hanox, he is already walking. The hand that took his has not let go, and the corridors ahead are the cool ones the last chapter promised. The storerooms of the winds, and the fire that gathers every sunset. Nothing in them asks anything. They are the parts of creation that were never once in trouble. Go there at his pace. The door down the corridor has finished closing. The water is talking out of the rock, and the snow is falling on Hemon, both of the mountain's voices already on their way down. They are walking now, the scribe and his guide, and the guide's hand has not let go. This stretch has no argument anywhere in it. A tour of the parts of creation that were never once in trouble. Back in the waking world, the letter has slid from the sleeping man's hand into the grass, and the first dew is finding it. Nothing minds. The reading was delivered long ago. The first hosts they pass are made of flaming fire, and, the book adds this with a straight face, when they wish, they appear as men. Courtesy reaches all the way down into physics. Beings of pure burning who put on a face and shoulders the way you put on a coat for a guest. Fire that dresses for company. Then the storerooms begin. He is shown the places of the luminaries, where heaven's lights are kept off duty, and the treasuries of the stars and of the thunder. Thunder stored like grain. In the uttermost depths he sees an armory of weather, a bow of fire with its arrows and sword, and all the lightnings. And notice the condition of everything in it, all of it put away. The bow unbent, the arrows quivered. The loudest things the sky owns are kept the way good tools are kept. And the dark down there is not an absence, it is shelving. Farther west, he is shown a fire whose whole task is receiving, the fire of the west, which takes in every setting of the sun. Every dusk that ever slid off the edge of the world arrives there and is gathered in. Somewhere, in other words, the sunsets are kept, including the ones you were too busy for. They went in with the rest. Past it runs a river of fire that flows exactly the way water flows, the book insists, unhurried, finding its level, down into the great sea of the west, the day's heat going home. He sees the great rivers, and the place where rivers stop being private, the mouths of all the rivers of the earth gathered, and beside them the mouth of the deep itself, the one opening the whole ocean answers to, closed, breathing slowly, like anything very large, asleep. And then the winds, which turn out to be the secret staff of everything. He has shown their treasuries, rooms of held breath, and what the breath is for. The winds, the book says, furnish the whole creation and bear up the earth's foundations. He sees the cornerstone of the earth itself, the one stone the rest of everything trusts, and the four winds that carry both the earth and the firmament of heaven, and the winds stretched between ground and sky as the very pillars of the vault, holding the world's ceiling at height, forever, without visible effort. Stand inside that a moment. In this book, the world rests on moving air. The most solid thing you know is being carried, and has been all your life. And hold this observation loosely. It has never once felt like being carried. No sway, no lurch of a load shifting. Floors feel like floors. Whatever does the carrying is so good at it that the carried have never noticed. There are winds too, with gentler chores. The ones that walk the sun down to its setting, and the stars after it. The sky's lamplighters, working the evening shift, turning every light toward its rest, one by one, missing none. The tour goes to the far edges then, where architecture grows strange and stays kind. 7 mountains of magnificent stone, 3 toward the east, founded one upon another, and 3 toward the south, and among them the middle one rising like a seat prepared, a throne of alabaster with a summit of sapphire, blue stone at the top of white, unoccupied and unhurried about it. Past the mountains lies a chasm, with columns of heavenly fire descending into it, columns beyond measuring in either direction, past in a breath, as the book's own travellers passed them. And beyond the chasm, the strangest room of all, a place with no sky fixed above it, and no founded earth beneath, no water in it, and no birds over it. The book gives it a hard name. Hear it gently instead, as what it plainly is: unfinished. A bare room at the back of creation, left bare on purpose, the way every workshop keeps one empty table. Not everything has to be something. Some places are allowed to simply not yet be, and to rest in that. And there, at the end of heaven and earth, lie the 7 stars. They look like great mountains, burning, but lying down. Wiel, guiding this stretch, explains without drama. Their transgression was a scheduling matter. They did not come forth at their appointed times. They missed their risings. For that they were bound here, to lie still until the count of the fault is complete. 10,000 years. Stars that would not get up on time answered with 10,000 years of lying down. The fault and its remedy made of the same material. The way a child who will not wake is finally allowed to sleep. The book shows them resting. 7 enormous lights, banked like the village's embers, working through their long count, the only way long counts are worked. One quiet unit at a time. They have thousands of years still to go, and nothing at all is required of them tonight. In this whole chapter of storerooms, they are the largest things in storage. Near them stands a station appointed for the angels who mingled with women. The book notes it, and notes the term set on it. The same far settling day everything unquiet in this book is aimed at. And of the wives it says one strange soft thing, that they became sirens. It says no more, and neither will we. Some sentences are shells the sea hands you unopened. And then the scribe says the quietest, enormous thing in the book. He alone, of everyone born, has seen this. In his own words, the ends of all things. And no one, he says, will see as he has seen. Not an edge to fall off. Not a fire to fear. Storerooms and pillars, and one bare room kept empty, and 7 vast sleepers working through their count. The ends of all things are a well-run house at night. He saw the very back of everything, and the very back of everything was put away neatly. The lowest shore on earth is a good place to finish a chapter like this. Go down some night to the Dead Sea, the deepest low the dry land owns, the far end of tonight's valley. The shore after dark is stones wearing shirts of salt, and warm air that has given up on wind, and water lying so still it files the moon flat. It is the sea, with no mouth at all. The Yarden walks in and nothing walks out, which is why it keeps everything, and why it is the heaviest and calmest water there is. And it does one thing no other sea does so well. It carries you. Lie back on it, and the water simply takes the weight, all of it unasked, and you float, held at the surface like a word on a page. There, in your own body, the held observation answers itself. This is what the ground has been doing all along. This is the 4 winds from inside the load. being carried, done well, does not feel like motion. It feels like this. Held is what carried feels like when it is done well. The snow has an interest here too. This water is the valley's last word. The springs of Dan and Banyas, the mountain's two voices, end their sentence in this stillness. So some of what floats you fell once as white on Hareman's summit. Up at the source, at this hour, more is falling the way it has all night, and some of it, slowly, is already on its way down the valley to hold up strangers. Next door in the book stands the quietest architecture yet, a mountain in the west with 4 smooth hollows, a dormitory made before anyone needed one, a bright spring kept for the good. That is the next hour. Nothing in it asks you to be awake. The sleepers there are in excellent hands. The stars have their 10,000 years. You only need one night, and it is going well. The water holds. The winds hold. The snow is falling on Hareman, and the whole carried world rests easy in the carrying. Before the western road there is a threshold, and at the threshold stand 7. The book pauses here to introduce them properly, the 7 holy ones who watch, and it does so in its register-keeping voice, name and charge, the way a night porter might walk you down a corridor of doors and tell you softly who keeps each one. This is the 3rd litany of the night. You know by now what litanies here are for. Beads, not keys. Let the names pass through your hands. Uriel, who is over the world and over the deep places beneath it. Raphael, who is over the spirits of men. Raguel, whose charge is the world of the lights. Every lamp of heaven is somebody's responsibility, and it is his. Michael, set over the best part of mankind. The book's own phrase, and it means the people. And over chaos, because someone has to be. Sarakiel, who is over the spirits that miss their way. Gaviel, who is over paradise, its serpents and its cherubim both, the garden entire, whatever lives in it. And Remiel, whom God set over those who rise. Stay one extra breath with the last one. There is an angel whose entire portfolio is the getting up, the eventual morning of everyone, filed and staffed and provided for. The waking of the world is somebody's whole job, which is exactly why the lying down, tonight, can be wholly yours. The road west passes, once and briefly, the deep rooms you have already seen put away, the resting stars in their long count, and below them the confined, named in one breath and left in the book's keeping. And then the land rises into the chapter's true destination. A great mountain of hard rock standing in the west. And inside it, 4 hollow places. In the book's own words, deep and wide and very smooth. The scribe himself stops to remark on it. How smooth these places are, he says. How deep to look into. Smooth is the word the chapter cannot get over, and neither should you. Not carved, not rough-hewn, but finished. Surfaces worked until nothing about them could catch or scrape. The way you finish the inside of a cradle. 3 of the hollows are dark. 1 is bright. And in the bright one rises a fountain of water. Picture the sound of that. One small water speaking in a stone room full of sleep, the way the springs of Dan spoke under a reading. The book keeps giving its quietest rooms a water voice. By now, that is simply how you know you are in the right place. Hold that arithmetic loosely. 3 dark, 1 bright. It is the chapter's one question shape, and it will be answered before the mountain is out of sight. The guide through this place is Raphael. And pause on the staffing, because the book has been consistent in the kindest way. Raphael, whose charge is the spirits of men. Raphael, who was sent to lay Azazel down under the desert. His 2 jobs in this book are laying down and looking after, and by now you can see they are the same job. If you must be shown a mountain full of sleepers, this is the hand you want doing the showing, because that is what it is. These hollows, Raphael explains, were made for a purpose, that the spirits of all the dead should gather here, every one of them from everywhere, and rest until the day of the great judgment. A dormitory cut before anyone needed one, waiting with its beds made. The dead of this book are not wandering. They are not out in the weather. They are gathered in smooth rooms inside a mountain, sorted gently by the lives they lived. The bright, watered room kept for the righteous, the dark ones for the others. And the book's ledgers on all of that are the book's business, kept in the book's ink. What is anyone's business? What you can see from the doorway is the workmanship. Whichever room, the walls got the same finish. Nobody smooths a room they mean to be cruel in. 3 dark and 1 bright, yes, but all 4 deep, all 4 wide, all 4 worked smooth as the inside of a shell. Rest was the design for every one of them. The differences are the ledgers. The smoothness is the builders. Smoothness for a sleeper is the whole of hospitality. Nothing in these rooms can snag a sleeve or a thought. Whoever finished these walls was thinking of the sleeper's comfort in the only way stone can think of it, by refusing everywhere to have an edge. One voice among the sleepers the book pauses on, Abel's, the first grief. His voice still remembered at the gates of the place. One gentle line and the book moves on, and so do we. And then Enoch does the strangest apt thing a visitor could do. Standing in a dormitory of all the dead, he blesses the Lord of glory. A man praising, quietly, in a room full of sleepers. Praise pitched so as to wake no one, which may be the most careful register praise has. The book keeps one more western errand before it turns toward warmth. Out past the mountain, a fire runs day and night and never rests. And before you brace for it, hear what the fire is for. Raguel, keeper of the world of the lights, explains, "This is the fire of the west, and its work is the luminaries of heaven. It is the tireless one that walks the lights of the sky home, evening after evening, gathering each lamp at the end of its course and seeing it in." The one thing in all these chapters that never sleeps turns out to be, in effect, the household staff of bedtime. A fire that stays up so that every light in heaven can go down on schedule. even the insomnia in this book is in service of sleep. The bright hollow with its fountain has a daylight cousin, and you can walk to it. On the western shore of the Dead Sea, the same still coast where the last chapter floated you, a canyon opens in the desert cliffs, and inside the hard rock there is water. The place is called En Gedi. A stream falls through it ledge by ledge, pool by pool, the pools handing the last light down the canyon, one to the next, like a message passed politely. And around the water the stone goes green, maidenhair ferns on the wet rock, reeds at the pool lips, shade with a temperature of its own. Ibex pick their way down the cliffs toward evening. On a warm ledge, a rock hyrax dozes, paws folded under it, doing absolutely nothing with great commitment. All around, for miles, the rock is as hard and bare as any mountain in the west of anywhere. And in the middle of it, this, a bright, watered room. The land, it turns out, rehearses the book's furniture. Bright water out of hard rock is this country's favourite sentence. This spring is not the mountains. En Gedi drinks the desert's own rare rain, not Hemon's snow. But the family resemblance is the point. Every bright water in this story says the same thing in its own accent, and the snow on Hemon is the sentence's northernmost speaker. It is speaking now, in fact, falling on the summit at this hour, unbothered, keeping its ground, the whole length of the valley between it and this warm ledge, and the same night over both. Warmth is next, truly next, not promised someday next. 7 fragrant mountains, a seat prepared among them, and one tree that does not wither, kept for the meek. Then the perfumed east, valley by valley. The sweetest rooms in the book are the last ones, which tells you something about the builder here too. Nothing between here and the end asks anything of you. The sleepers are looked after. The lights are walked home. The snow is falling on Hemon, smooth as the inside of a shell. Somewhere along the road, the air changes its mind. The travellers feel it before they can name it. The cold, cosmic corridors are behind them, and what comes toward them now on the wind is green and sweet. The smell of a world that is looking forward to something. The guide for this stretch is Mihael. Note the staffing one more time, because the book has never once gotten it wrong. Mihael, set over the best part of mankind, the people's own angel, leading the way into the chapters where the people are promised things. They come to 7 mountains, magnificent, each of different stone, with deep ravines between that no one crosses in a hurry. You have seen a seat prepared once already tonight, far off in cold alabaster at the world's edge. This is its warm twin, the 7th mountain, in the midst of the others, rises above them all, like a throne that is also a hill, and around its height stand fragrant trees, a whole court of them, each with its own sweetness. And among those trees, one, the scribe says he had never smelled anything like it. And the book slows down to describe it, the way you describe something you are still standing in front of. Its fragrance is beyond all fragrance. Its leaves and blossom do not wither, and neither does the wood itself, not seasonally, not ever. The tree holds its green the way Hermon holds its white, and its fruit is beautiful, hanging in clusters like the dates of a palm. A tree in perfect fruit, in perfect leaf, in permanent spring. And one rule standing quietly beside it, which the book states without apology: no mortal may touch it. Not yet. Hold that little rule loosely. It sounds like a locked door, and it is not one, Mikhail explains. And his explanation is the warmest architecture in the book. The high seat among the mountains is kept for the great Holy One, the Lord of Glory, the Eternal King. Kept for a particular day, the day he comes down to visit the earth with goodness. Visit with goodness. That is the stated agenda. And the tree is kept too, for the righteous and the meek, after the great settling. Its fruit will be food for the chosen. It will be transplanted, roots and all, to the holy place, beside the house of the eternal King. Moved, in other words, to where the people will be, so that no one has to travel far for it. And then the line this whole chapter exists to carry, in the book's own words: its fragrance shall be in their bones. Not on their skin, not in the air around them, in their bones. Sweetness settled into the frame of a person, load-bearing, permanent. And they will live long lives on the earth, the way the old fathers lived. And the book stacks up 4 refusals over those lives like blankets. No sorrow will touch them, and no plague. No torment, and no calamity. Hanox, hearing all this, does what he does at high water marks. He blesses the God of glory. Who prepared such things, the scribe says, and promised to give them? Prepared and promised. The tense of the whole chapter is that. Already made, not yet handed over, absolutely intended. The road bends through the middle of the earth then, in one passing breath. A blessed place of trees, with branches that abide and bloom. A holy mountain with water running out beneath it toward the south. Ravines of hard, bare rock that make the scribe marvel out loud. And one valley nearby, set apart for a harder purpose, which the book notes in a line and walks past. And so do we. The way from here runs east, and the east, in this book, is where the perfume lives. What follows is the last litany of the night, and the best smelling. Station by station, a wilderness, watered, gushing with springs, green out of all expectation. Then mountain slopes, where the trees breathe frankincense and myrrh. Breathe them. The fragrance is just what the trees exhale. Then valleys of sweet cane and true cinnamon. Then groves that let down a nectar the book names in a whisper: Sarara and Galbanum. Sap with its own proper names like nobility. Then aloe trees full of stacte, almond-like, whose bark, when a little is burned, smells sweeter than any fragrance in the world's inventory. Then 7 mountains. 7 again, the book's favourite arithmetic. Full of choice nard and fragrant trees, of cinnamon and pepper. A mountain range you could season a world from. And at the litany's end, water. The travellers pass over the Red Sea, far past it, past an angel the book names Tzotiel and tells us nothing else about. A doorkeeper glimpsed once and gone. And beyond all of it lies the Garden of Righteousness. The trees here are large and beautiful, and among them stands one more tree the chapter has been saving. The Tree of Wisdom. Tall as a fir, with leaves like the carobs. Its fruit hangs like the clusters of the vine, very beautiful, and its fragrance carries far beyond its own shade. Raphael, him again, the layer down and looker after, tells the scribe plainly what it is, and then tells him the family news. This is the tree your father of old and your aged mother ate from, the two who were before you. They learnt wisdom there. Their eyes were opened. They saw that they were unclothed, and they were driven from the garden. The book says it exactly that gently. No names, no thunder in the telling. Your old father, your aged mother, the tree, the wisdom, the leaving. It is the oldest hard story there is, told the way grandmothers tell the hard parts, briefly, with the blame long since composted as one more thing that happened to people we love. So the book, near its end, holds up two trees. One behind the human family, already eaten from, the garden already left. And one ahead, in fruit right now, untouched, being kept. And the little rule from the seventh mountain settles into its true shape at last. Kept is not withheld. Nobody fences a tree they intend to deny. You fence a tree you are saving for someone. The fruit is not locked away from the meek. It is locked away for them, ripening on schedule toward a day with their name on it. You live between the two trees. Everyone does. It is the whole human address. Wisdom behind you, sweetness ahead, and the space between them furnished tonight with a bed. The frankincense from that litany is not a legend, and its trees keep sundown hours you can stand among, in the far south of Umman, near Salalah, Bronx, a shallow desert valley called Wadi Dorka holds an old grove of frankincense trees. Low, twist-armed things, growing out of gravel as if soil were a luxury they never acquired. Harvesters make small cuts in the bark, and the tree answers slowly. The sap beads at the wound and sets into pale, hard tears. The desert's own snowfall, one drop at a time, months in the falling. At sundown, the low light comes through the branches sideways. Someone's water bottle stands at a tree's foot, holding its own small sunset. And the air smells faintly of the litany you just heard. Burn one pale tear on an ember, and the whole chapter comes back at once. Far to the north and west of those trees, past more desert than seems reasonable, and at least one sea, the snow is falling on Chemon, unhurried, keeping its ground, white tears on a summit, the way the resin is white tears on a branch. The mountain and the grove are doing the same slow work in different materials, holding sweetness in a cold, patient form until somebody comes for it. One chapter remains, and it is the book's own falling asleep. The ends of the earth, the many-voiced birds, the small gates the stars slip through, and Uriel writing everything down so that nobody else has to. Nothing in it resolves, because nothing in it was ever tense. Go there the way the stars go, through a small gate, on a path already shown. The two trees stand where they stand. The fragrance is on its way to the bones. The snow is falling on Heremon, and it is being saved for someone too. The last road runs to the ends of the earth, and the ends of the earth turn out to be inhabited. Great beasts live there, each unlike the next, and birds past counting, differing in look, differing in beauty, and above all, differing in voice, so that the rim of the world is not silent at all, but softly talkative, like the far roam of a house where a window has been left open on an aviary. The book is nearly finished, and it is still delighting in variety. That is worth noticing about a book that knows how it ends. The last thing it does with the world is enjoy it. East of the beasts, the heaven comes down and rests on the earth. The book says so, simply. The sky set on the world like a lid on a jar that fits. And there the portals stand open, and through them the stars come out. And here the scribe does the last great scribal thing of his book. He counts the portals. He watches the stars of heaven come forth, and he writes down their outlets. Each individual star by itself, the book says, by number and by name, by course and by position, by times and by months. Uriel stands with him, showing him everything. And then, in the tenderest clerical detail in all these chapters, Uriel writes it down for him. The names too, the scribe notes, and the laws and companies of them. The recording angel does the recording. Think what that means. Here at the end of a night in which you were promised at the very start that nothing would need remembering. It was not a courtesy, it was policy. The universe in this book is fully minuted. Every star's name, every course, every appointed month. Set down twice by two careful hands, and filed where it cannot be lost. Which is why the stars themselves can simply come out and shine, and go, carrying nothing, and why you can do the same. The register is kept. Attendance is someone else's job. If, somewhere in these hours, a chapter slipped past you, a name, a whole valley of spice, it slipped into good hands, not into nothing. Everything you drifted through was written down twice, before you ever heard it. All the lights have to do is appear when called, softly, one by one, like names read at lights out down a long dormitory, each small light answering by existing. The tour turns north, for the sentence the whole night has been keeping. At the ends of the whole earth stands something the book calls great and glorious. A device, an apparatus, there at the rim of everything. And it does not explain it. And by now you trust the book's unexplained things completely. 3 portals of heaven stand open there, and through them the north sends down its whole inventory: cold, hail, frost, snow, dew, rain. Stop on the 4th item. Snow. This is where it comes from. The white that has been falling on Hemon since the first sentence of the night has been blowing all along out of a northern gate at the edge of the world. The motif had an address the whole time. You were never resting on weather. You were resting on architecture. And of those 3 gates, the book says one strange, wonderful thing, and then declines to elaborate. Out of one portal, the winds blow for good. Only good. Whatever comes through that gate, whichever of the 6 it sends, arrives as blessing, every time, without exception. The other 2 the book marks for harder weather and closes the note. They are not tonight's gates. But the good one, the book never says which of the 3 it is, and never says why such a gate exists. Nobody wrote it down. Perhaps nobody was meant to. Some doors in a house are simply known to the house. Leave it standing open at the edge of the story, blowing its unexplained kindness. It is the one thing tonight you are invited not to understand, only to be downwind of. West then, briefly. 3 portals there too. The same number as the east. Outlet for outlet. As many doors out of this sky as into it. Nothing that rises here was ever without a way to set. The bookkeeping extends to exits. Even leaving in this book is provided for. South, briefer still. The south's gates send up the gentle staples, dew and rain, and the wind that delivers them. No harder weather is even mentioned. The South, in this book, has the easiest job in creation. And then East once more, for the image the book chooses to end its geography on. 3 great portals, and above them, smaller ones. Little doors over the big doors. Through each of the small portals pass the stars of heaven, slipping out one by one and running their course to the west, in the book's own words, on the path which is shown to them. That is the last mechanism the scribe records. Not thrones, not fires, small doors and shown paths. Every light in the sky is walked to its place nightly by standing instruction. Nothing up there is improvising. Nothing up there is lost. The whole ceiling of the world moves on rails of kindness through doors sized exactly to what must pass. And then the Book of the Watchers does its final thing, which is the same as its first thing. It blesses. The scribe, watching the small doors work, blessed the Lord of Glory, and kept on blessing, the text says, continually, for the wonders wrought and shown to heaven's own orders and to men alike, so that all of them might see the work and praise it. And with that, the book ends. Not on the verdict, that was the middle. Not on the deep rooms, those are minded. On praise. A book that opened a night of yours ago and whole ages of its own, with an old man blessing people he would never meet, closes with the same man blessing still facing forward, still handing the good word downstream. First sentence and last sentence, both of them blessings, and the entire strange story held between them like something carried carefully in two hands. Snow is falling on Mount Hermon. It was the first sentence of the night, and it has not stopped being true. Come back to it now, in the last hour of the dark. The villages on the flanks have long since gone from gold to grey to nothing. In one of them, a shutter was left half open at bedtime, and no harm has come of it, and none will. The springs at the mountain's foot are running, Dan and Banyas, the two voices, talking their way down the valley toward the still sea at the bottom. The whole length of tonight's geography laid out under one sky, every station of it at rest. The caves above the still sea are dark and full. The lamps of Oxford went out hours ago. And the snow comes down onto the summit where the 200 once stood. Out of the north, through some gate at the rim of the world. The book does not say which gate tonight's snow is using, but you have met the gates now, and you know one of them blows only for good. And on a night like this, at the end of a story like this, you are free to assume. So let everything stand where it was put. The registers are kept twice over. The rooms are smooth. The tree is ripening toward its day. The gate in the north stands open. The snow is coming through it now, unhurried, the way it has come all night. It has a long way to fall, and all night to fall it. So do you.